Hello, so today we're going to give an introduction to the inventory system. We'll take a look at creating a new item, the interface, and what's going on in the background. So if we give a quick run through, we've simply got items scattered across the world. You can hold the action key down, move them around in the space, rotate them and inspect and that kind of stuff, and drop them down. So if we exit the viewport and we head over to some of the items in the actual world, what you'll find in the default section is an AIS item base. So in this array, essentially you've got an ID and a quantity. So the items themselves only hold these variables as such, and then they kind of construct themselves based on their ID from the data table. So for example, if you change the ID to 4, changes to the orange bag. If you go to 7, change to the axe. If you change to 8, and so forth. So, and then for the quantity, we have something called a max stack. So if the item itself doesn't kind of align with the maximum stack and the ID to the data table, it essentially destroys itself, and basically tells you as a print saying the quantity is invalid. So with the max stack, so the reference to this is if you try to pick up 2 items with a max stack of 1, let's say, and then pick up a couple of these, what you'll find is they'll basically hold themselves as a single entity within the inventory. So if we jump straight into the data table then of the items, we've got a couple of generic variables to kind of populate what the item is. So we've got a category, rarity base, and name, and all that kind of common stuff. But what you'll find here then is a reference foreign key. So the reference foreign key is essentially kind of built like a relationship kind of database, where the reference key will essentially grab, so logically through your, as you program in, you'll essentially grab the category. So if it's a weapon, for example, in this case it's a bag item. So for the bag item, it doesn't, if you notice, there isn't any bag slot capacities. So if you find in the actual viewport, when you go over a bag item, it tells you that it's 10 slots. So this is derived via another data table that's within the structure for the bag, for example, and in here this will be the reference foreign key for bag items. So if you want to have, so say if you've got weapons, for example, like the axe, and you want to apply damage and that kind of stuff, rather than having so many redundant columns that are not going to be used by other categories, you spread them out through different data tables, and it kind of reduces the amount of kind of blank column entry points that you're going to have. So that will include like the damage, the durability, and that kind of stuff. And then moving over next, we'll kind of have a look at creating a new item then. So it's again, you just simply go over to the data table items. Essentially you'll where's the plus button? So you press the add, and then you'll essentially define what it's going to be. Let's just do armor, for example. Make it ascended. What's the name going to be? Let's have a look at what meshes we've got. Well, let's just make a campfire for argument's sake, and then we'll just pick a random texture. So it's just a campfire, and then ABC. Max stack, and because we don't need a reference for this item, so if you were using a kind of like another data table as reference for the foreign key, you basically populate that with whatever value that you need it to be. You got to watch as well, like if it doesn't need one, make sure there isn't a row for index 0 for a foreign key, so kind of make that nulled out. So if you save that, and then if we go ahead and put a master item within the space, it defaults to 1, and I think it was 18. Nope. What are we on? So in the new row as well, you got to so the row name is the actual ID, so it doesn't take into account the first bit. So this ID, so just align it to the actual data table on the left. Save that, and then save all. Change that to 18 again. No. There we go. So the campfire in this case now is actually an item, so it looks a bit funny, but it's just showing you the power of what you can do with the inventory system. So if you don't plan to have actors in the world and you want to kind of have just generic bag items, for example, then I guess it would work in that sense. Okay, so going over to the where all of the logic is held, so this is going to the back end kind of stuff and how the front end interface communicates with the back end. So if you go over to the AS player controller, and then in the inventory management section, you'll find a function called an event called move item request. So this move item request is what you would call, so if you were kind of in one of your widgets, for example, say you're creating a new skin or a new inventory front, you'd essentially call the AIS move item request, and then you'd fill that in to define where the inventory is coming from. So the array source. So in this case, you kind of say when you grab another bag item, you'll move the array source. In this case will be the inventory, and then this is the bag space array, so you'd move that into the bag space array, and then vice versa. So you say the array source inventory, array destination bag space, current index for the array source, new index for the array destination, and the quantity, and then you want to apply the references to whatever you want to send it to. Okay, so apologies. So this is the actual function. Move item request. So you'd pull the event, not the function. And then the references then is applied here. So if you wanted to create, let's say, a hotbar, for example, what you'd have to do is edit the function here. You'd essentially add the hotbar inventory reference, and then you'd apply it here. And then to edit, these are enums. So if you go into the structure, I think is item type, item arrays. So in here you basically apply to define where it is going to and from. And the enum is designed as kind of like a switch. So this gives you serious granular distinction of what you want items to do as they pass between inventories. So it allows you then, so when you apply the hotbar, for example, you'd have to have a hotbar state. So these, you'd have to extend the majority of these then to basically create a hotbar. So, but once you've done this bit, it's basically calling the appropriate functions listed on the left pane that are all aligned here. So for example, item move bag space, item move array, so you're moving from one array to the other and that kind of stuff. So it does get quite granular and quite deep quickly. But again, this project is completely designed to prototype and allow you to kind of attach things on, so it's well thought out. Okay, and I think that's basically the conclusion of the inventory then. Yeah, okay. So yeah, if you've got any questions or any comments or even any criticisms on the project, feel free to comment, and we'll get back to you straight away.